Start over again. My name is Tony Martinez, and we're going to be hosting here an amazing roundtable discussion. Today is all about what is happening now as a result of the eviction moratorium ending. I'm going to be serving a couple roles here. I'm here both as the real estate practitioner. I am the broker of Xtreme International Realty, and also the proud owner of the Certified Distressed Property Expert, which is an organization and training program devoted to teaching real estate agents across the country how to help individuals avoid foreclosure through short sales. I'm joined today by two amazing legal eagles. One is Conrad Grant of Kelly and Grant attorneys. Conrad and I have known each other, I think, 2 or 3 years. He has spoken at our office several times. Besides being real estate attorneys, there are eviction specialists, and I really wanted him to be on the call to have that perspective, obviously, here. And I'm also joined by my good friend Omar Arcia of the Arcia law firm, real estate attorney, and also an amazing foreclosure defense attorney. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Good morning. Good to be here.
Okay, great.
Well, listen, thanks for inviting us, Tony.
Oh, my pleasure. So today's session is going to be kind of free flowing. Okay, my approach to this is kind of like the less scripted, the better, because we want to make sure that the information is, relevant to the individuals that are on the call. But what really motivated me to schedule this was it about 2 weeks ago? We're approaching now that the Supreme Court essentially struck down the CDC's moratorium against the eviction ban. And that sent shockwaves across the industry. For those of you who have been following this, the eviction ban actually ended. What was it, toward the end of July, I think it ended, or something like that. And then it was like 2 or 3 days. Is it going to stick? Is it not? And then next thing you know, it's back, right? And we knew it was going to be contested in the Supreme Court, and decision came down. And now most of the country is no longer under that restriction. There are a few states out there that have continued, but this audience should be almost everyone here from Florida. So I'm really glad that we're able to go ahead and address the needs and everything of our local community and state. So I'll go ahead and start with you, Conrad. Do you see what happens now? I think that's the main thing. Everyone's kind of like been handcuffed up until now, right? Nothing's been happening. What has happened since this ended a couple of weeks ago?
Well, what has happened is the people can now move forward with evictions. So let me back up. So I'll explain to everyone what this means and what it meant months ago. A lot of investors and landlords and property managers mistakenly believed that they couldn't do evictions. But you could have always done evictions, even for non-payment of rent, which is what the moratorium banned. So you could do those evictions, but if the tenant filed a declaration asking to be covered under the CDC order, then you couldn't execute a writ of possession, which means where the sheriff comes to the property and removes them from the property. That could not happen. You could always file your evictions. So a lot of landlords are filing evictions with the hope that the moratorium would expire in December, and then in January, and then in March, and then in July. So they were always hoping that it would expire, and all you have to do is execute that writ of possession. So what's happening right now, all those writs of possession that were stayed can now be executed by the sheriff. All right, judges were staying final judgments and they were delaying cases. You know, Mr. Grant, let's set this until the end of October when the moratorium is over, and I'll grant your final judgment then. That was happening. Now all these cases are moving through the courts. There are lots of delays, but we're full speed ahead. You can remove your tenant who is not paying rent at this point.
Okay, the delays are because of volume and a bottleneck, or delays because there's still not acceptance that the moratorium is officially over?
No, in Florida, it's accepted. We're moving forward. It's the bottleneck. So the sheriff in many counties have been backed up for over a year. And now they don't have the manpower to execute all these writs that have been stacked. The judges are also working, I would say, overtime trying to sign final judgments. So it's a backup in the system with all these backlogged and delayed court cases that have been sitting on the sidelines.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like you're going to be pretty busy in the months to come, right?
We are, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any estimate in terms of numbers? I mean, you know, how many potential evictions are we looking at, either in Florida or the Tri-County area? What would you guesstimate?
In the Tri-County area, I can tell you, based on my firm's volume, right? Typically, we do around 300 evictions a month. Could be 250 to 300. Last year at this time, we were down to maybe 100. So now we're back full force. And I can tell you this just anecdotally based on the call volumes we get. I can track the calls. They come in through online. We track them in our lead system. And so I can see the numbers are going up. There are two other major eviction law firms in South Florida, and I'm good friends. We have a friendly relationship with those guys, and those guys are also reporting that their numbers are getting back up to pre-pandemic levels. So if I was doing 300 a month and I'm approaching that number, I would say that it's not worse than it was in 2019. Things are just normalizing. There's no just this mad rush to evict people. A lot of landlords have worked things out with their tenants. They've collected money through the ERAP program. Some tenants have voluntarily left on their own, or their leases have expired and they were evicted for overstaying their leases or for lease violation or month-to-month tenancies. But the non-payment, it was never the crisis that you would see in the national news.
Interesting. See, that to me is surprising because I thought for sure that we were going to see a wave of evictions, but you're saying that maybe in South Florida, for the most part, people were able to work things out with their landlords, and we're not going to have the same situation in maybe some other areas.
No, and we do evictions in all 67 counties. So we have a big presence in Central Florida, in Duval County, and we're seeing the same things there. It's normal. It's not any crisis. We're not overwhelmed. We're just back to 2019 eviction levels. And
Okay.
All my friends in other law firms are reporting the same thing.
Okay. All right. Well, that's really good to know. Now, if I can turn my attention to Omar. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm blessed, and it's great to see a lot of friendly names on the board here. It's great to see some friendly faces that haven't seen for a while. I think we're getting ready to get back to normal. What do you think, Tony?
I don't know what normal is anymore, brother. I'll be honest with you. You know, I think normal is relative, but you and I are always in conversation because we, in full disclosure, you're a special legal counsel for my real estate company. You're my go-to guy when it comes to foreclosure defense, and you know that I'm always constantly teaching on foreclosure avoidance. Now, you've been sitting on the sidelines, so to speak, for a while now, because the thought process was, it wasn't that the lenders could not initiate foreclosure. It was they didn't see the point in initiating foreclosure when you couldn't see it through the eviction. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And the eviction moratorium had the same numbing effect on foreclosures than it did on standard residential evictions, because with a foreclosure, you finish the foreclosure by what's called a writ of possession. So the bank basically takes over the property either after a foreclosure sale or after some other court process or order. And that couldn't happen because you couldn't evict folks out of their homes, or at least properties in which they were residing, because there's foreclosures in which the borrower was no longer residing, that the person could be evicted. But even if that person that was living there filed the CDC affidavit, that's all they had to do to stay in that property until now. So what we're seeing is, as a result of the Supreme Court's order basically striking the CDC extension, because essentially what they said was, hey, CDC, you had a great idea here in keeping people in their homes, but the way you went about doing it is not constitutional, it's not legal. So, it's kind of like, thank you for trying, but go home. Try it the other way, which is the legal way, which is going through Congress and going through the legislative process and making sure that you follow the order of the three branches of government, as opposed to just making an executive decision to just file an order and make everyone across the land follow it. So once that's out of the way, now foreclosures can start finishing again. And what we're seeing is, all of a sudden we've gone from seeing 1 to 2 new foreclosures a month as far as folks coming in to hire us, to like 3 to 4 a week. And we're seeing the numbers in Broward County and Miami-Dade County, which are our biggest counties that we work in. We're seeing those numbers rise astronomically. Miami-Dade County, for example, so far this month, in just the 8 days that we have this month, there's already been 500 new foreclosure filings. In Broward County, the 8 days that we have this month, there's been 250 new foreclosure filings. The regular numbers, pandemic numbers for foreclosure filings, were somewhere in the teens. They would go as high as 50 per month. So right away, we're seeing the numbers escalate at a number that's going to be very, very significant for anyone in the real estate industry. And it's very simple. And keep something in mind, and at least from Conrad's standpoint, he did have somewhat of a backup in the judges not wanting to execute those writs of possession. But with foreclosure, there's close to 2 million foreclosure cases in the pipeline right now in the state of Florida that have not been completed because the banks have put a halt on it as a result of the moratorium. The Supreme Court of Florida has made it clear to all the judges across the state that they need to wrap up their cases within the next 12 months. All the pending foreclosure cases that are in the pipeline right now, they need to be wrapped up within the 12 months. And judges are very adamant about not delaying matters and moving matters along. They want to get these cases finalized. What that means for the real estate industry, and we've been talking about this for a long time, and we've been preparing for this for a long time, is that now we're going to have a flood of new properties on the market, which we can go after as far as new listings. I don't know what it's going to do as far as the pricing is concerned. I don't know whether the pricing is going to hold, but generally speaking, if history is any indicator for us, then if you have more properties in the market, you have a flood of properties in the market, if you have more volume than need or more volume than demand, then price goes down. Right now, we have more demand than volume.
Well, let me ask you this. I just want to make sure that we get the numbers straight. So you mentioned 2 million. Were you referring to the almost 2 million people that are in forbearance nationwide? Because you mentioned Florida, and that seems a little high for Florida. So
the numbers that I've heard, and by the way, these are not new foreclosures that are going to be filed. This is all the counties in the state of Florida, all the active foreclosures that we have. This is every single active foreclosure in the state of Florida is right now nearing that number. Wow. Because they haven't been able to do anything about it. And that's not counting all the new foreclosures that are coming out.
See, that's insane. That's insane. And, listen, I need to find out more about that, because I had an idea, a suspicion that Florida was going to be especially hard hit, because pre-pandemic, Florida was consistently in the top 5 nationally in foreclosure filings. It's just that foreclosures weren't front page news, right? I mean, it weren't sexy anymore. And then, of course, with the moratoriums and everything else, it just completely fell by the wayside. Now we're seeing the numbers tick up again, but I'm not really able to get any solid numbers in terms of how many potential defaults. I know that Miami as a metropolitan area is #1 in the country. Of 384 metropolitan areas, Miami is #1 in serious delinquencies. And by serious delinquencies, we mean 90 days late or more. So we, I have been, and if I don't, allow me to interject the real estate side of it right now. I have gone on record as predicting a wave of foreclosures, and I have been getting pushback from agents across the country. One of my motivations to purchasing the CDPE designation and bringing it back was because my little crystal ball gave me a vision that we're going to have a whole lot of people facing foreclosure. And we needed real estate professionals that could engage these folks and help them by pointing them in the right direction, trying to get as many resources at their disposal as possible. And people are like, it reminds me of 2006, 2007. If there was a segment of the population that refused to believe that we were in the bubble, it was the real estate industry. They would refuse to believe that we're in a bubble. Now, I am not predicting a crash. Maybe somebody else here believes that. I'm not going that far. What I'm saying is that we're going to see an increase in the number of properties that are going to be in foreclosure. And then the magic question is going to be, are these folks going to have equity, or are they not going to have equity? Conrad, let me ask you this, because you work with landlords all the time. Are you hearing from any of your landlord clients that they're done with being a landlord? They're saying, you know what, I'm out.
That's what I was raising my hand about. They are going to be added to the foreclosure roster. A lot of landlords haven't been able to. First, I'll back up and let you know that the majority of my clients, they're not the institutional ones, the big apartment complexes. They're mom and pop. They own 1, maybe 4. I do have a few small apartments, maybe 8 plexes and so on. But a lot of them couldn't pay their bills. So the frustration was always there. Of course, they took it out on me. It's always my fault. But the bottom line is they weren't getting any money coming in. Tenants weren't paying anything at all. A lot of tenants were just taking advantage of the situation. I know that because I could see their Instagram posts and they're popping champagne and just not paying their rent. So every time we went to court, I had to show the judge evidence. This is this guy on his boat. Landlords were not collecting any money. And so a lot of them they're at risk for foreclosure, or they're selling their properties. That's what we're facing. I had a quick question for Omar, though. I don't know much about the CARES Act, but is that still in effect? And you tell us a little bit about that.
The CARES Act was essentially what a lot of the servicers and the lenders were using to justify not proceeding with the foreclosure proceeding and the foreclosure itself. And as far as I know, that's still in effect if they can demonstrate that the person has been affected by COVID, is living in the property, and their job has been affected by COVID. As I understand, the judges, as late as last week, lenders were making a claim under the CARES Act to somehow be able to keep the person in the property. Judges are becoming increasingly less willing to accept those kind of suggestions, even from the lenders, because they're under pressure from the Supreme Court of Florida to move these cases forward to a conclusion. So unless it's very specific, unless they can demonstrate evidence of actual harm to the person from being forced out of their home as a result of non-payment and everything else, then their claim under the CARES Act is not going to be accepted.
If I could chime in also for those that are wondering, when the CARES Act passed, essentially it was, you no longer have to pay your mortgage, and I think upwards of, was it close to maybe 10 million people at one point were taking advantage of this. Now, come on, if you don't have to make your payment and there's no penalty, there's no negative consequences whatsoever, no interest, additional interest or penalties, whatever. A lot of people did take them up. Now, it started off as 6 months, and you can extend an additional 6 months, and it was extended another 6 months. And so, now that number of people that are officially in forbearance is at about 1.7, 1.8 million, and people are exiting every day. Now, why are they exiting? And see, this is the part where I think so many real estate practitioners, you have to understand what's coming, okay? When it's not free money. I mean, are we all on the same page that it's not like they said, you're forgiven these 18 months that you haven't made your payments, these 24 months that you haven't made it's not forgiven. That money is going to be due. Now, depending upon the lender, it could be a balloon payment. If they weren't Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, one of the ones that were government-sponsored entities, right? And you're going to get people that are going to be shocked when the lender says, hey, here you go, pay me 18 grand, whatever that number is. And then there's a lot of talk about, oh, wow, all these programs that are designed to help people stay in their home, they're going to increase their mortgage payment time to 40 years and blah, blah, blah. Here's my thought on this, folks. We still have a lot of people unemployed. Maybe they're unemployed because they don't want to be employed, but they're unemployed. You can't work something out with the bank to stay in your home if you can't prove that you can make the payments going forward. I mean, that's just simple math right there. So I'm going to come back to that because I would like to ask a follow-up question to Conrad, and then I have a couple for Omar. You mentioned, and I mean, we're right in sync about these landlords, and I do feel for them. Look, we've gone through a terrible time as a country. I don't doubt whatsoever that there are individuals without any fault of their own that could not make their rent payments and are suffering right now. And eviction is not something that anybody wishes on anybody. But I think that the perception of the landlord had been that this greedy, evil corporate entity, when, as you said, the typical landlord out there is just a mom and pop, they own one or two, and they were hoping that this would be their passive income going into for their retirement, right? They haven't made their payments in probably 18 months or longer. They're facing foreclosure. They may not be able to come back. These are additional properties that could come on the market. You as real estate agents out there, you need to aggressively market to landlords. You need to aggressively market to, these people may not even live in Florida, but that is a potential market for you. Now, let's talk about the equity situation, because I would love to hear if you as legal eagles get a sense that it's true what is being touted out there, that we're more equity rich as a country right now than ever before. So there are no problems. If someone has to sell, they're going to walk out with tons and tons of money in their pocket. Conrad, do you get a sense that many of your landlords are equity rich?
I do believe that some of them, if not most, they bought at the right time, because some of these people have been my clients for a long time. Some of them bought at the right time, and they will get some money. They will make some money. The problem is, what are you going to do with this money? You know, they do. Some of them are equity rich. I'll have to admit to that. Mm-hmm. The ones who are getting out, though, they don't have enough money. Let's say they make $20,000 or $30,000. It's not enough money to buy up, to move from a single family to a quadplex. You know, and if it's so it's not a lot of money. Overall, I would say if you get an entire pool of real estate properties, you could say, yeah, that hedge fund is equity rich. But for the average person, it's not a lot of money. It's not a lot after closing costs and so on. So, you know, it depends on what you consider to be equity rich.
Got you. And look, for the real estate agents out there, do not confuse foreclosure with being underwater. You know, obviously I'm a short sales guy. I teach all about it. And the way I've gone about teaching it now versus the way we taught it in 2008. In 2008, it was almost a given that if you were in foreclosure, chances are you were underwater. Chances are you were looking at a short sale. Now, what you need to do is reprogram your thinking and establish as early as possible a valuation on that property and find out what they owe. Because you may be looking at a regular sale. You know, yeah, you could have a sale date. All these issues come into play, and that's what we're going to talk to Omar about. But don't confuse foreclosure with lacking in equity. Now, for those that are lacking in equity to the point where they're underwater, then that's a short sale. That's a potential short sale. And let's face it, the vast majority of real estate professionals can't even spell short sale, much less conclude one. And that's where my training and everything steps in. Now, Omar, you're typically representing a homeowner facing foreclosure, and your role is to act as the foreclosure defense attorney in that area, right? How often, I mean, what do you think are the chances that many of the folks that are going to hire you are going to be able to stay in their property?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it's going to depend on how effective the services are, the servicers are in rolling out all of these wonderful modification plans, flex modification, all these streamlined modification plans that they've touted for the last 4 to 6 months that we haven't seen. I've only, in this entire time that I've been representing folks from, you know, from Monroe County all the way up to Jacksonville, I've seen one of these streamlined modifications go through our office where the bank simply just offered a modification to our client out of the blue. That's it. So, I mean, whether or not this actually happens, and they can actually put and implement into play what they have talked about for so long, will determine the outcome of what happens with properties in the state of Florida. So if they're able to effectively implement these modification plans and offer quick modifications to these folks, streamlined modifications that don't require the lengthy process of submitting an application, going through financials, negotiating back and forth on the terms of the modification, if they're able just to submit a one payment modification instead of a trial plan that could last as much as 4 months or 6 months, then I think we're going to be in good shape. If they don't, then we're not going to be back to 2008 numbers, but we're certainly not going to be in a position where we're going to have you know, a situation where all these properties are going to be effectively resolved. I want to just kind of give everyone kind of a practice tip that I've been dealing with. And this is something that you've talked about in your short sale seminars. I think it bears repeating. Even though it may not appear that a property is a short sale because the first mortgage is less than the value of the property, folks, you got to do a little more research. You got to look at second mortgages. You got to look at judgment liens against that property. You got to look at any city and county liens against that property, because a property that a person may have $100,000 mortgage on it, the house is worth $400,000, may have $400,000 of IRS liens tied to it. And that's all public record. You can find all that. So all of a sudden, this deal turns into a short sale because the person owes, in fact, against that property more than the property is worth, even though the mortgage on record doesn't appear that the person is doing for a short sale. So if you have any inkling whatsoever that the property, the total that's owed on the property is more than the value of the property, make sure you have that short sale addendum signed by both realtors and both parties, so everyone is on the same page with that. Because the worst thing that I've seen happen is everyone goes in barreling in thinking it's not a short sale, and then when it comes time to basically start cutting out the fat, and the realtors realize that they're going to have to give up a point or a point and a half to make this deal happen, the whole deal unravels. So make sure that you know that it is a short sale. And that's really, I think that practice tip right there can save a lot of people a lot of headaches when they're looking at a new property. And listen, if there's a lot of liens on that property, if you've got 10 county liens and an IRS lien and a second mortgage and a third mortgage, man, it's going to be a tough short sale. It's going to be a tough short sale. Maybe you want to refer out to a friend or maybe perhaps your enemy.
That's another seminar. No, you mentioned it's true. A lot of people, I've always lived by the adage, trust but verify. You ask this homeowner how many mortgages you have, and they say one. Uh-huh,
Right.
one. So I always say, so you follow up with, so you've never taken out a home equity line of credit, right? You've never taken out a home improvement loan, right? Oh, yeah, we did one of those. Duh, that's a mortgage. And so what happens is do not take it at face value. You can go look at the docket. You can click on the complaint. You can see who the defendants are to see exactly how many they are. There are folks that modified their loans years ago, and the loan was added, the amount, because principal wasn't forgiven. It was just added somewhere to the back of the loan. And guess what? It rears its ugly head as you're approaching closing. So let me ask you this, Omar, of the folks that are approaching you for foreclosure defense, how many of them are in an equity position?
Very few of my clients are in equity position right now, Tony.
Wow.
And I think there's two reasons why. The reason number one is they've already done a prior modification and they have that balloon payment at the end. So they'll look at their mortgage statement and it says unpaid principal balance X, but then it has that other amount that's in there, which is the amount that's being held at the back end of the loan, almost like a second mortgage, and you have to add them up. The other reason why is because people haven't paid through the moratorium. So their taxes, their insurance, all the interest payments have now added up. And even though they may have had $40,000, $50,000 of equity going into the moratorium back in March of last year, now they're upside down. Even though property values have gone up, their amounts that they owe on that property have also gone up. So because of those two reasons, because they've had a prior modification which increased the amount that they owed, and because you have they haven't paid their taxes, their insurance, and their mortgage taxes, their principal and interest payments for over a year, they've kind of eaten away at their equity.
Especially if there were FHA buyers. Here's the thing, when I'm confronted with the equity equation, I always say, I get it. There are individuals that are sitting on a ton of cash. There's no doubt about it. I mean, we've seen monstrous increase in home prices. A lot of folks bought, like Conrad mentioned, doing a great time. But a lot of people, see, again, the human factor is that what do typical Americans do when they have access to money? We get it. We tap it. And people have been, every day you're seeing advertisement for refinancing, right? Every 15 seconds there's an ad for how cheap money is and how available it is. And if you try to be disciplined and you try to get a refinance for just rate and terms, the lender looks at you like you grew a second head and say, well, why wouldn't you take out money? Why wouldn't you take out money for home improvement? And this and this and that. So I think there are people, a lot of people, it's just not been disclosed yet, that have eaten away at the equity by refinancing not once, not twice, but 3 times in the past several years. And if you started with an FHA loan to begin with in the past 2 years, and you only had 3.5% down, you may have eaten away at a lot of your equity already, my friends. And let's not even go, I guess we got to go there. Who's to say we're going to continue to have 20% increases in property values? Come on, folks. Let's get real. Doesn't any of this look familiar to, I don't know, 2006, 2007, when we thought for sure that the party was never going to end? So there's a lot of things we don't know. And we just, as real estate professionals, the vast majority of us here on the call, be prepared. I always believe that you need to surround yourself with a team of experts. You got Conrad here, that's your go-to person, that anything that has to do with the eviction side of things, okay? And Conrad, I don't know if you can answer this question, but if you can, please do it. But people are always asking me, how do I get a list of absentee landlords, absentee owners? Do these lists exist, brother? Are they out there? And if
I don't think anyone has compiled a list, but I can tell you when we were doing some marketing, maybe a few years ago, and
Mhm.
you got to do it in a creative way. You've got to go on to the property appraiser site, and then you'll have two different addresses, and maybe you can set up some automation to do that. But I think there are people who will sell you that service, that they can pull this information for you. But it's a matter of, okay, the mailing address is in Colorado, and the property is located in Miami-Dade County, and then that's how some of them figure it out. But there are companies that sell that data. But if you're going to do it yourself, you're going to have to get creative. You're going to have to get some automation software that can pull the data and compile it for you.
Yeah, it's a matter of, you have to do the legwork. I mean, ultimately, yeah, it's one thing to pull up a property that's in foreclosure. You can go to IMAP right now, pull up a property in foreclosure, and then work backwards and say, hey, is this an absentee owner potentially there? But
I can add something to that. I do have some people who randomly call, and I can't give them any information because I'm an attorney. And they'll say, hey, I see a writ of possession was posted. So these people troll the eviction process, and they see these properties going through evictions, and then they'll reach out either to the landlord, but all that information is there for evictions. And that's easier to do. You just go on to the clerk of courts, and maybe you can search through those. I don't know how they do it, but then they'll say, hey, is your landlord selling the property? And I say, I can't give you that info, but people are very creative that way. If I could add something, Omar mentioned, a lot of people who, they're so far behind on their mortgage. Now, with the landlord side, landlords are going to have a hard time finding what are good tenants, because a lot of these people have marred their rentability. If they decided to buy into this, I'm not going to pay my rent, even though some of them could. And what's happened is that money is still due. Just as with foreclosure, you forbear, the money is still due. So that loan wasn't forgiven. It's the same with evictions. A lot of landlords are going after these tenants for that 18 months of back rent. They're suing them for damages, especially the ones with that Brickell address that could afford it, and they had no good reason not to pay. So now you're going to have a lot of people with an eviction on their records just because they fell into this moratorium trap and didn't pay their. So, you're going to have to do a lot more vetting. Some of these people are good people who've just fell on hard times, and some of these people just took advantage of the system. So you're going to have to do your vetting carefully, landlords.
Well, and you bring up a good point. A lot of the agents here are going to represent potential tenants, and they're going to come already marred with this, and you're going to have to get creative. I mean, you have to be realistic. You have to have a discussion with them and say, listen, you've made my job more difficult. I mean, let's face it, there are homeowners associations out there right now. If you don't have an 800 credit score, they won't even accept you. Much less an eviction on your record. So now agents are going to have to get very creative, look for properties that don't have HOAs. And, maybe landlords are going to say, I got burned last time. Okay, I want additional deposits. I want additional security on there. So that's just the way it is. Look, I want to do this because we're running out of time. I want to open it up briefly to any questions that our audience may have for anyone here. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question, please do, because we are going to be wrapping up the call in the next 8 or 9 minutes. Anybody want to ask a question?
Tony, I just wanted to make one quick comment before we jump over to questions. We found in our research probably the most robust list of leads and lead information as far as real estate is concerned is a company called RedX Vortex. And they give you a lot of information on each particular property. They're probably will save you about 1,000% of your time, because they put all the information from all the court system and everything. And just like you can do with certain other applications, you can identify a particular location you want to do it in, and it gives you all that information pretty quickly. So if anyone wants to get with me, and I'll be more than happy to kind of walk them through that process. And it's very inexpensive to join that service.
Yeah, RedX,
So,
Land Voice, Vulcan, these are all wonderful services. They scrub the names against the do not call list, and many times they provide email addresses as well. It's an investment. If you're a real estate agent or you're an investor and you want to go out, try to contact these end users directly, you're going to have to get aggressive. No one's going to hand you the list.
I want to make a recommendation to everyone right now. Don't call these people and tell them you want to sell their home, because everyone is calling them and telling them that they want to sell their home. I want to be your realtor. You want to sell your home? No. What you need to call these people and tell them is, how can I help you save your home?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh, but you're dead
How
on.
can I help you save the roof over your heads? And then when they go through that mental process of realizing, and it may take them 8 months to a year, of realizing they can't afford to keep that home, then guess what? They're going to turn back to the person that had the integrity to say, let me help you save your home. They're going to turn back to you. They're not going to turn back to the 20 or 30 other realtors that called them and said, hey, I want to list your home. I'll give you money for it. I'll do whatever it takes. That's not who they're going to turn to. Make yourself stand out. If you're doing any cold calling, tell them one thing. How can I help you save your home? Well, I'm in a foreclosure. What can I do? Let me put you in contact with a foreclosure attorney that can help you save your home through modification. And I assure you, as I have assured many of your realtors, that I'll go through that process. I'll go through a loan modification process and all loss mitigation that's available before I turn them back over to the realtor and say, we can't do anything for them. I think it's time to have that discussion about selling their home.
I completely agree. You know, this dovetails to what the Certified Distressed Property Expert course is all about. I mean, at 1 p.m. today, I'm teaching session 1 of 5 to agents from all across the country. And I teach agents, don't have dollar signs in your eyes. I mean, really be an advocate to help people stay in their homes and introduce them to people that could go through those options. And yes, when they've exhausted, and sadly, a lot of them will exhaust all options for staying in the home, then you can dovetail into, well, if you have no choice but to leave, then exit with dignity. Nobody wants to be shown to the curb by the sheriff. And if it means a regular sale because you're blessed enough to have equity, I'm here to help you. And if it means a short sale because you're underwater, well, I'm also trained to help you in that arena as well. So for those that are listening and would like to find out more about the Certified Distressed Property Expert, you can reach out to me. What I want to do is this. I know, Omar, you've posted your contact information. Conrad, if you can post your contact information in the chat area. What I'm going to do is send out this recording to everyone that registered. We had maybe about 120 that registered. And because of scheduling conflicts and whatever, I'm going to go ahead and send out this recording to everyone so that they can play it over and they can share it with others. And then they'll be able to contact you all individually. I'm here to help you from the real estate side, the education side. If you'd like to find out more about short sales, we got Conrad here, the eviction specialist. We have Omar, foreclosure defense specialist. This is your dream team, folks. This is what it's really all about. And I think that pretty much does it, folks. I want to thank my legal eagles here for your time and attention. Your time is money. Thank you for investing and helping folks here. Let me see here. Yep, great. All right, folks. Well, listen, Omar, Conrad, thank you. I'm indebted to you. I really appreciate it. Audience, thank you for investing in yourselves and in your customers. And let's just go out there and just do as good as we can. That's all we can effectively do. Is it's okay to do well financially if you're doing good by others. So let's practice that and stay safe. And we'll see you next time. Take care now, everyone. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye now.